I give you Sue Ann.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is a wonderful turnout. I wasn't expecting it. So let's start with me as a little girl sitting on a log on the shores of Lake Erie, reciting poetry to my father, and he would pay me 50 cents. So of course I was going to learn it. Then he said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? You can be anything you want to be. I went, okay. I want to be a boxer. I don't know what it was about me that made me not want to do any of those traditional roles. So even though I grew up in the country and I went to college and I graduated from Ohio University, I then drove myself to Washington, D.C. to seek my fame and my fortune. I then ran into a woman who became my roommate, and she worked for the Washington, D.C. Police Department. She said, why don't you come and be a police officer? I got to shoot a gun. I thought, how cool is that? So I became a policewoman in Washington, D.C. They had the highest crime rate per capita of any city in the nation, and probably still do. After about a year and a half, I run into a guy that I had gone to rookie school with. He worked at the White House. He says, they're trying to get some positions open at the White House. Why don't you apply? I'm going, okay, alleyway, stinky precincts, or the White House? I think I'll go for the job at the White House. So I applied. 6 months later, they got me my top secret clearance, and I became one of the first women to work at the White House in the uniform division, which is part of the Secret Service. But I always had a mantra: I can do this. I can do it. And a lot of times I had to say that to myself because I was being continually pushed out of my comfort zone. But how do you gain confidence? How do you become a leader without being pushed out of your comfort zone, accomplishing something, being successful, conquering your fear, and doing it? And then one time I was in Washington, D.C. at some big fancy event, and they said to me, you stand this post for this big dinner, and nobody gets in without an invitation. I said, yes, sir. Okay. That was fine until Ted Kennedy came up. And guess what? He didn't have an invitation. And I had to stand there and say, I'm sorry, sir, but you have to have an invitation. He was not happy. I don't think there were too many people who said no to Ted Kennedy. So when people say, what was it like to be a Secret Service agent, I can tell you that it was exciting and it was exhilarating. It was exhausting. And I'm really glad I lived through it. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Shirley.